You have HR 308, which is regards to banning guns of high capacity. The shooting in Arizona, a perfect example of an individual who came down with a high capacity gun and shot the Congresswoman Giffords. Could you elaborate a little bit on your stance on that particular bill and why you feel that maybe high capacity guns should be banned in this country?
I'd like to believe that we can make headway on some things that ought to get out of the anti-gun, pro-gun framing, right? I gotta believe that most Americans would get behind the notion that we could do a lot more to keep guns out of the hands of the deranged, the violent, the criminal. And I'd like to believe that, and I'm speaking optimistically here, but I'd like to believe that we could have a pragmatic discussion that starts with the premise that the Second Amendment, certainly according to the Supreme Court, guarantees an individual right to bear arms. Okay, let's stipulate that. That's settled law by the Supreme Court. Can we now talk about every other right that we have, of course, has strictures? And is it not reasonable to suggest that weaponry which serves no purpose but to kill lots of people quickly ought to be taken off the table? And this is the logic behind the banning of magazines in excess of 10 bullets. It's not a new idea. This was in effect until 2004 when the assault weapon ban expired. I wish I could say that we're going to see that passed, or that either of the two ideas that I just talked about are likely to move forward, but I mean, when the Democrats controlled the House and the Senate and everything else, the one piece of gun legislation that the majority at the time passed was to forbid states from preventing weapons in national parks, right? A step perhaps backwards. So I'm not optimistic on that, but I do hope that that's an area where over time a more practical approach by the gun lobby that I hope at some point sees their interest in joining the rest of the world and saying let's shave off the awful outcomes and fight for what we see as our interest to bear arms. I hope that eventually they get there. Right now, though, the membership is cowed by the gun lobby.
A quick follow-up to that: Mayor Bloomberg just recently did an undercover investigation in Arizona where he sent some investigators in there and said, "Look, I don't think I can pass a background check," and they received guns anyway. At some point, do you think that the federal government should just step in and say, look, in these gun shows, you cannot be able to give out guns without a proper background check? Because for me personally, I think it's outrageous that somebody who can just walk up and say, hey, I don't think I can pass a background check, maybe I'm crazy or something, and they're walking out with high-capacity guns.
We should absolutely close the gun show loophole. I mean, it's an absurdity, right? I mean, if the objective is to safeguard the rights of responsible people to have guns, but to prevent irresponsible people from having guns, how can you countenance the gun show loophole? It makes no sense. So again, I personally would support federal legislation to close that gun show loophole. I wouldn't bet my next paycheck, though, that it's on a fast track through the Congress.